Hi everyone, my name is Lakshmi Tulasi. I'm from second year CSCB, bearing the roll number 573. So today I'm here to give P&S seminar, which is probability and statistics seminar, and today my topic is classification and collection of data. So I want to discuss about how we classify the data, what are the types of data, and how we collect the data, and all the information regarding that. So let's see here. So before starting, I want to discuss about data, the definition of data. So data is nothing but it is a collection of facts which are numbers, words or measurements and observation etc. that have been translated into form that computer can process. So generally data is nothing but the acts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis. So generally we can classify the data overall into two types. Data is of two types, which is qualitative and quantitative. So this is the classification of data. So first let's see what is qualitative data, what is quantitative data. So qualitative data is nothing but a data which deals with the descriptions, which deals with the quality of certain thing. Okay, so we can easily, by seeing something, we can easily express or say the quality about the certain data, by just looking at it objective, by looking at it. So as we mentioned here, the definition is it deals with the characteristics and descriptions that cannot be easily measured but can be observed subjectively. So we can, by looking at them, we can judge the quality of the certain data. So it is again further divided into two types as mentioned here, which is nominal and ordinal. So the nominal data is nothing but the data with no inherent order or ranking. So there is no order for a certain data. If there is no order for a data, then it is nominal data. If there is certain order for a data, then it is ordinal data. So if we can say the examples of nominal data, example is male, female, etc. So ordinal data is low, medium, high. So low, medium, high has an order, whereas male, female doesn't have any order to it. So we can easily mention, like we can easily classify and notice the difference between nominal and ordinal data. Okay, so the ordinal data, which has an ordered series, generally this is an ordered series of information. Quantitative data. So quantitative data is nothing but it deals with the numbers and things. So the countable, the data which is counted, like the data which is counted or measured is nothing but the quantitative data. So we can only measure or count it in order to, or calculate it or perform some calculations on it in order to get some conclusions out of it. So it is quantitative data. So quantitative data is of two types, which is discrete data and continuous data. So discrete data is nothing but the data which can hold finite number of values. It takes assumes countable number of values. For example, number of students in a class, number of persons in a meeting, etc. So for example, we can count all these things, number of students in a class and number of persons in a meeting, or number of birds flying in the sky. We can count all these values. So this is discrete data. And what is continuous data? Continuous data is the data that can hold an infinite number of uncountable values. So this is the data which has infinite values and which we can count. Okay, so for example, maximum daily temperature and height of a person, which we can't count, we can perform any calculations on it. So it is continuous data. So yeah, next let's move on to the collection of data. So data collection plays very crucial role in statistical analysis. So generally the collection of data is very important in order to perform the statistical calculations and measures, in order to draw some conclusions of data. It is very important to perform some collection, perform activities for the collection of data. So it is also called as data identification, as we mentioned here. And there are two approaches in order to collect the data, so which is primary data and secondary data. The data is classified into two types, primary data and secondary data. So the primary data is collected certain way and the secondary data is collected certain way. So let's see how it is collected. So let's see the differences between them. primary data. So the primary data is one which collected for the first time by the researcher by the sake of his own research, and this data is actual and original data. So this is collected by the researcher himself, whatever he wants, researcher itself, and whatever he wants, he just collects the data which is required by him, by himself. Okay, the secondary data, whereas, is already collected data by some other or stored information which can be available in general, journal, newspapers, web, internet, etc. The secondary data is nothing but which is already available, which is collected by some other person, and which we are taking for our analysis, for our calculations, So this is the main difference between primary and secondary data, and what primary data means and what secondary data means. So let's see the actual differences between primary data and secondary data. So here we have the differences between primary data and secondary data. So the primary data refers to the first-hand data gathered by the researcher himself, as we mentioned. So secondary data means data collected by someone else earlier. So this is the data which we use, which is by taking from another source or another person, So let's see more differences on this. It is real-time data. The primary data is real-time data, whereas secondary data is past data. Primary data is very involved, and secondary data is quick and easy. The process required to collect the primary data, we have to involve in it, we have to put the effort into it. Whereas secondary data, it's very quick and easy. We can get it anywhere we want to. So the source for collecting the primary data is surveys, observations, experiments, questionnaire, personal interview, etc. So here we directly interact with the people, we do surveys, we do observations, we do all the experiments, and we question people in order to get the data we required. So whereas the secondary data source is government publications, websites, books, journal articles, internet records, etc. Right? So these are the things we use, the source we use in order to collect the secondary data. So next, the cost effectiveness. Primary data, it's very expensive, whereas the secondary data, it's economical. Right? If you want to collect primary data, it's very expensive to collect it, as we have to put in the effort. Maybe we have to hire a team for it, or we have to do it ourselves. Whatever it costs, okay, it is expensive compared to the secondary data, whereas secondary data, it's very economical and it's very easy to collect it, in fact. So the collection time, it takes long time to collect the primary data, as the researcher has to go to everyone and collect every small detail, like they have to collect the data from every person, or from a lot of people. It takes a long time in order to collect it. So whereas secondary data takes short time, as it is already collected by some other person and we are taking it from the source, right? So always specific to researcher needs. Whatever researcher want, they collects that data. Whereas secondary data may or may not be specific to researcher needs. We just take the data which is available in the source, it may or may not be specific to our needs, whatever we require or whatever we want. Okay, so next, it's available in crude form, and the secondary data is available in refined form. And the accuracy and reliability is primary data is very accurate and very reliable, whereas secondary data, it's not that accurate, it's not that reliable, as it is from other source. It may be inaccurate, who knows. Whereas primary data, the researcher goes by himself and collects it, and he knows everything about the data, he knows everything about the things he's done, or whatever he collected is more accurate and more reliable. And what is meant by crude form and refined form is primary data is available in a raw form, whereas the secondary data is available in more calculated, more measured, a more refined form. That is mentioned here. So thank you. That is everything about the collection and classification of data. So thank you so much.